Hey, this is Paul Lathrop from the Polite Society Podcast, reminding you that this podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Check out all the other great podcasts on the network at selfdefenseradio.net.
Welcome to Unload and Show Clear, the podcast about all things IDPA. And now, here's your host, the high-functioning marksman, Lloyd Bailey.
Welcome to another episode of Unload and Show Clear. This is a podcast about the men and women who compete in IDPA, International Defensive Pistol Association. Now, I've been attending IDPA matches since 2011, and over the years, I've met some really amazing people thanks to this sport. Ignore all the colorful jerseys and the sponsor logos, and underneath you're going to find everyday men and women who volunteer their time and their effort and spend their hard-earned dollars on travel, match fees, and gear to make this sport great. And today you're going to meet another one of these awesome people. But first, I want to thank today's sponsor. All right, before we get started, I want to tell you about GlockTriggers.com. Recently, at a sanctioned IDPA match, I went to the line, I went to load and make ready, and the little dingus thing flew out of my trigger. Just completely flew out of the gun. So I had to scramble and shoot the stage with a backup gun. So now I'm in the market for a new trigger. And guess what I found? GlockTriggers.com. Love them or hate them, the one thing that you know about Glock pistols is their reliability. They're out of the box, to the range, to the match, absolutely reliable. And it's what makes them popular with competitors like myself, law enforcement, military, and responsible citizens. But the one drawback is that stock trigger. Well, Jeff Wilson and the people at Glock Triggers, they asked themselves, how can we make this better? But how can we do it while maintaining reliability? Using stock parts as their foundation, they refine the interaction of the metal parts in the trigger kit to give you smoother take-up, a cleaner break, and reduced overtravel without sacrificing safety or reliability. That's important. Recommended and used by people like Bob Vogel, Travis Haley, and Ken Hackathorn. Glock Triggers custom trigger kits come with a lifetime warranty and a 30-day satisfaction guarantee. Check out the Edge, the Vogel, the Skimmer, the Guardian, or the Hackathorn trigger system and use the promo code from this podcast, USC20, and save 20% off your entire order. GlockTriggers.com, the highest quality drop-in trigger system for your Glock. Our special guest today is Lynn Pozehl from Bellevue, Nebraska. Lynn, welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do for a living there in Bellevue?
My full-time job, I'm a case manager for the Nebraska Department of Corrections. And my part-time job, I work at a local gun range, 88 Tactical, and I'm a handgun instructor there. I teach basic handgun skills and concealed carry classes and things like that.
Very good. So how long have you been working in corrections?
Oh, about 21 years.
And where did the interest in firearms come from? Were you raised around guns? You have guns in the home, go hunting as a kid, or is this something that as you grew older, you found an interest in?
Even as a kid, I was always interested. I was always a kid, with my buddies out, playing Army, and always been interested in guns growing up. My family was never really a hunting family per se,
mm-hmm.
but I did a little bit of hunting. But then as I got older, and my friends and I, we would target shoot and stuff, and then I joined the Army Reserves, and did a lot of. I was a drill sergeant in this for about 17 years. Not a lot of handgun shooting there, but
right.
Learned a lot there otherwise, and really just started competing about probably 3 or 4 years ago.
So first off, thank you for your service. I really do appreciate it. How did, with all that experience with long guns, where did the interest in what was the introduction to handguns, and then and the introduction to competitive shooting? Like you say, if it's only, I think, 2014 when you joined IDPA.
Right.
How did you get introduced to it?
Well, I've always, I don't know if you'd call it a fascination with handguns. I've always liked handguns, and to me, handguns are more challenging than long guns.
Mm.
I mean, there's just fewer points of contact, really,
Right.
But so it's more challenging. I've always enjoyed shooting handguns, and I just got to a point. I said, I need to look into this, and I found the first organization I found was IDPA Nebraska in Lincoln, Nebraska, which is about 50 miles away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And the match director there has a class that he offers every couple months. It's, beginning IDPA. He just kind of teaches you the rules a little bit and gets new people started. And so I signed up, took that class, and I've started shooting IDPA and had a blast ever since.
What do you remember of the first local match that you shot?
I remember there was a guy there that he's master class shooter, really, really, really good shooter. And I was, of course, way slower than him, but I also was down zero the whole stage, and he wasn't. So I was pretty thrilled with that. And, being a nice guy, he kind of pumped me up a little bit, even though he smoked me otherwise. But just had a good time. And the people were, everybody there was, even though you were the new guy, was real encouraging and had a good time. And that's something I've really enjoyed about, competitive shooting, whether it be IDPA or USPSA, because I do that as well. But just the people that you meet, are overwhelmingly good people.
Yeah. What division, what handgun are you competing with most often currently?
Well, this year I'm going all carry optics. Last year I shot CDP, but they made carry optics a full-on division this year. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do that.
What did you start out with?
Started out in stock service pistol. Mm-hmm. I had a little 9mm, and I rapidly said, you know what? I like those 1911s. So I got one of those, and we did CDP for a little while. And
you saw the high-speed, low-drag guys with the 1911s and the really light triggers, and
yep. I mean, other than if you're going to carry it around a lot, there's nothing about a 1911 not to like except for the weight.
Right. How long after that first match? How long after that before you got out and tried your hand at a sanctioned match?
Oh, it was probably 2 years or so. The only sanctioned match, IDPA match, that I've ever gone to is the Iowa State championship, and it was funny. The first year we went to that, my wife also shoots IDPA with me. Got her involved.
Nice. And
we went to that, and it was weird. We were just standing by this car, kind of waiting for the sign-in to start, and another guy there. He was from Iowa. He had to leave real quick and come back, and he pulled his car out, and we were still standing there when he drove up, and we basically saved his parking place for him. And so, not really intentionally, but we did, and he pulled up, and we kind of struck up a conversation, and it turns out he was a former Army vet as well, and we wound up shooting in the same squad that day. We didn't even realize it. And we've been fast friends ever since. We go there every year, and we get together and have dinner and talk back and forth throughout the year and just have a good time. So that's pretty much one of our yearly vacations, is going to Iowa and shooting that match.
Before we talk about the match, talk about getting your wife involved in competitive shooting. How hard of a sell was that? Was she already interested in guns, or did you have to kind of sell it?
She liked guns. I mean, she was okay with that, and she'd go shooting with me. She was very apprehensive about, thinking she wasn't good enough at first.
Right.
And it was one of those deals where I would try to teach her a proper way of doing it, but because I'm her husband, You're not going to listen to me, So I started getting there with some other people, and I actually wasn't working at 88 Tactical at the time, but I got her a couple classes there. And then after that, she would kind of come back and she said, yeah, I've heard most of what they said a time or two, begrudgingly admitting that I might have been right. And then, she'd go to the matches with me and watch, and she's just kind of figured out that you don't have to be good necessarily. You just have to be safe, and being good will come.
Right.
So, yeah, we enjoy it. And plus, she started to figure out pretty quickly that the people you meet there are really good, fun people too. So
that helps. That definitely helps.
Yep.
So tell us about the first Iowa State match that you went to. What year was that?
God, it would have been about 3 years ago.
Would it have been 2016 maybe?
Yeah, I think so. I have a terrible memory. Terrible memory for dates.
First year of the boat stage?
Yes. Well, actually, they have a boat every year, or at least every year that I've been there. And
Scott Longhorn built that thing, and I was there the first year they actually had it in a tank where it actually was floating by itself.
Right. Were you there last year by chance?
I missed it last year. One of my teammates went last year, but I wasn't able to make it.
Last year they had it in a giant trough mounted on a semi flatbed.
Yep.
And it was hooked up with a rope with weights, and you were hanging on to this rope, and when you let go, it started pulling you down this trough. And you had to engage all these targets, and one of the targets was a spinning target. And I went through that thing thinking to myself, and when I got to the end of it, I'd lost track of what targets I had shot at. So I went back and re-engaged everything just to be sure. And I thought, when I got out of that boat, I thought, this is just going to be horrible. And it turned out to be my best stage of the match. Which probably doesn't say too much about how the rest of the match went for me. But
right.
We have always thought and been impressed with the stage design and the work they put into the stages there in Iowa. I mean, they are just amazing of the stuff they come up with. The first time we went there, we were just like, oh my goodness, we were not prepared for this. But it was fun. It was a blast.
What else, aside from that stage, what do you remember about the experience of that first sanctioned match?
I think we were surprised. I mean, because, golly, we shot from about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning till I think it was finally over at 7, 8 o'clock that night.
Yep.
And it was just miserable hot. And I don't think I saw anybody get, as hot and miserable as it was, everybody was having a good time.
Yep.
And they run around, brought ice cream to everybody, which quickly turned into soup, but,
Drink your ice cream.
Yeah. It was just, everybody was hot and miserable and pouring water over themselves and still just having a blast. And everybody was just super nice. Nobody got grouchy or anything like that. And everybody was willing to help. The second year we went there, I didn't even think about it. I had bought some remanufactured ammo. Mm-hmm. And we just took that, and that, of course, didn't make chrono because I wasn't thinking about it. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, no. And some guy come up and handed me a pail of ammo. He says, here you go. This is loaded. I loaded it myself, and it's already past chrono. And he just gave it to me, a whole pail of ammo. I'm like, for my wife and I both. And I'm like, wow, okay.
Nice. Nice.
That's the kind of good people you meet at these places.
Yep, definitely. So the Iowa is the closest sanctioned match to you?
Probably, yeah. We've looked at going down to Missouri. I think Backstoppers do a match down there.
Yep.
But from videos I've seen, it looks like a really fun match too. But it's a little bit further.
Yeah.
Then the one up in Wisconsin would still be a little bit of a jaunt, but that looks fun too.
Yep. Just as an aside, for those who are interested in hearing more about the Iowa State match, go back and listen to episode 14 where we talked to Scott Longhorn, and he describes the evolution of that boat stage and how it changed over the first 3 years, and that crazy spinning target that you talked about.
When we got there that first year in 2016, and we just kind of walked the stages the night before, and I come around the corner and I saw that boat, I was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do with this?
Yeah, because you always do the boat on the ground, right?
Yeah.
There's always a canoe or some boat that they've put on the ground, and maybe for effect, they might throw out a blue tarp just to kind of give you the illusion that you're in the water. But this was full on, floating in, trying to shoot at the same time. It was awesome.
And I'm not going to lie, that first year, I thought about moving the boat out of the way and just sitting down in the water. It was so darn hot.
Yep, that's for sure. So tell us about your home club. How often they hold matches? How often are you out there shooting?
Well, this last year, it's been about a full year now. We've gotten kind of lucky with I was shooting once a month at that IDPA Nebraska in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the other guys that was shooting there with me, who lives in a little town just maybe 20 miles away from Bellevue, another indoor range here in Omaha opened up, and he got with the owner there and approached him with the idea of running IDPA matches. So they've been doing it there as well for about a year now. And so I'm actually getting to shoot twice a month.
Nice.
In IDPA. Yeah.
Nice.
And he's kind of an evil genius like Scott, in that he's retired and has a lot of time to dream up and create different stage props and spinning targets and all kinds of stuff. So that's kind of fun.
Very cool. All right, let's play a little Pick Your Poison. I don't think you've heard these questions yet. Today's episode, this past week's episode with Dylan Bisman was the debut of the Pick Your Poison segment of the show, where I'll ask you, I'll give you a couple of choices, and you have to choose one or the other and explain why you prefer the one that you do. If you have to shoot a standard stage, would you prefer to shoot it first stage of the match or the last stage?
If it's a sanctioned match, I would probably prefer to shoot it the first stage.
Get it out of the way.
Yeah, because by the time you're towards the end of a sanctioned match, you're just so tired that you almost don't care anymore.
That's true.
And if it's just a local club match, I would almost rather shoot it last, because you've had that first stage to kind of get a little bit of a warm up in.
Yeah. Moving targets. You come to a stage and with a couple of moving targets on it. Would you prefer it was a swinging threat target or a swinging non-threat target? Swinging threat with non-threats behind, or swinging non-threat with the threat target stationary behind it?
I would rather have the swinging target be the threat. Gotcha.
Why is that?
Oddly enough, because the first time I had a swinging threat target was at the 2015 Iowa State match.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the last target engaged on the stage, and I planned it out so that I basically had a full mag at that point. And it was one of those last stages of the match where you're like, what the heck? Everything else has not gone well. I'm just going to go for this.
Right.
And I literally mag dumped on that thing. And I hit every target, every bullet in the down zero except for one.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't believe it. So ever since then, I've liked the swinging target to be the threat.
Gotcha. Nice. Can do that again if you tried, I guess. Probably.
No, I couldn't.
Wide open targets, no barriers, no threat targets, but all the targets are out to, say, 20 yards. Or would you prefer to have lots of non-threats and everything in close, say 10 yards, 10 to 12?
Honest to God, I like a mixture of both.
Mm-hmm.
Up until a year ago, I would have liked everything close. And it seems like every year we go to Iowa, they have at least one stage where they have, some pretty far distances.
Right.
And so we've really been practicing that, and we've gotten pretty good at it. And so last year we went and I actually down zeroed everything that was over 20 yards. And I did it and I felt like a pretty decent time for me anyhow. So now I've gotten to the point where close is fine. And, I'm fairly confident with the distance targets too now.
Cool. All right. Let's say you're going to go to nationals or to worlds and you don't have enough points to pick your day and shoot, say Friday, Saturday or something like that. And your only choice is to shoot everything in one day. And it's 16 or like last year, 18 stages. Do you shoot all 16 in one day? Or do you say, I think I'll wait till next year?
Oh, I'd go for it and shoot it all in one day.
That's what everybody has said, and it surprised me. So, but how often do you get the opportunity to do something like that? So
exactly. So yeah, I would just do it all in one day and soak it in and sleep for 2 days after that.
Right. We talked about the heat at the Iowa match in July. Do you prefer, if you had to choose, freezing cold or just sweltering hot, 30-degree weather or 100 degrees?
I'll take it 100 degrees every day and twice on Sunday. The place in Lincoln where I shoot the IDPA Nebraska, that's an indoor range that really doesn't have much heat at all.
Oh.
So in January, you're indoors and it is freezing in there. Of course, the ventilation system is turning the air over with the outside air. And it's brutal in there in January and February.
It's like shooting in a meat locker.
Exactly.
We talked about
the guy that owns the range is super nice, love him to death, but it's an old building, and he actually doesn't own the building itself. He owns a business, and the people that owns the building won't let him do a whole lot to improve it. So.
Gotcha. All right. You talked about moving targets earlier and mag dumping 9 out of 10 shots down zero on a mover. Do you prefer swinging targets or drop turners?
I would probably say drop turners because I find them a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I do like the swingers though because of the challenge.
Right.
But just for, scoring better on the stage, I would prefer the drop turns.
All right. Last one. Stow and go stage. You got, gun on the table and mags on the table or in a box, and you got to stow them before you move to your first point of cover. Do you stow them in your mag pouches or do you stow them in a pocket?
Usually in the mag pouches.
Why? As opposed to the pocket?
Well, most of the time when I've done a stage like that, it was going to require more than one reload.
Mm-hmm.
If it was a case where I just had to load the gun and I was only going to have to do one reload, I'd probably go for a pocket.
Gotcha.
But I figure having 2 mags in a pocket jingling around, and it would just be more, it wouldn't be as advantageous as having it in the mag pouch.
Right. And you shoot 1911s. Do you find with the thinner single stack 1911 magazines, it's easier to hit the mag pouches?
No, actually, I have an even harder time with that. and like I said, this year I switched to carry optics, and I'm shooting a SIG P320.
Nice.
And my reloads and working the mags is a whole lot faster this year. Those 1911s you got to have a pretty good mag well on that thing if you're going to be fast.
Right. Which rule change do you think in the 2017 rule book? You talked about that first local match and seeing that master class shooter, and while you shot down zero on one stage and outshot him in that respect, he was able to outrun less accurate shooting because of the old rules.
Right.
Which of the rule changes in the 2017 rule book do you think had the biggest impact on your game? Was it the 1 second per point or was it being able to reload on the move, in the open? Which of the rules do you think helped your game more?
I think it was the 1 second per point. I like that a lot because I'm not the fastest guy in the world, but I can generally hit pretty well. And I think, the guy that's going to win the gunfight isn't necessarily the fastest, but it's the fastest one to get his hits.
Right.
And so I like the premium placed on accuracy with IDPA versus USPSA. I also like where they've changed it now to not making the cover call so subjective. I like having the fault lines.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a safety officer as well, and that kind of takes the heat off the safety officer a little bit.
Right.
Well, and plus two, it allows you to watch safety a little bit more rather than trying to watch that stuff quite so much.
Yep.
And quite frankly, like I said, I shoot both sports, but I like IDPA in the respect that the scoring system is relatively simple to understand. I've shot USPSA for a couple of years too, and I still can't begin to tell you how that thing is scored. You got to be some kind of a math major or something to figure that out.
Right. A slide rule. And
yeah.
So as we kind of wrap things up here, what is it, you've kind of alluded to this, but what is it about IDPA that you love so much that you've even mentioned you like IDPA for certain reasons more than the other shooting sports? What is it about this sport that makes it so much fun that keeps you doing it instead of maybe finding another shooting sport that is more of a pure shooting challenge? Why do you keep coming back to IDPA?
Well, like I said, I shoot both. I shoot USPSA and IDPA, and then I also do the Steel Challenge. Pretty much if I'm pulling the trigger, I'm going to be out there. But like I said, I also teach at the range here in town, and people that want to get started in it maybe don't know where to get started or how to get started. IDPA is a great place to start because it's not quite so equipment intensive. You don't have to have 5 or 6 magazines for your gun to go shoot a match. You don't have to have 5 or 6 magazine pouches to go shoot a match. You just need a holster, 2 magazine pouches, and 3 magazines, and come shoot and have fun.
Yep.
So that's a good place to get people started and get them into the sport. And the more people we get going, the better off we are.
Absolutely. Well, Lynn, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really do appreciate you being our first Nebraskan to venture onto the show. I appreciate you taking the time, and hope I can get up to Iowa maybe this year. Won't be able to do it this year, maybe next year, and see you on the range.
You bet. Thanks a lot.
All right, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank our guest for coming on the show and our sponsors for making all of this possible. Take a moment, if you would, to check out the website, check out our show notes at unloadpodcast.com. We've got lots of interviews with more amazing guests like the one you heard today. Join our Facebook group at unloadpodcast.com/Facebook for all the latest updates and to connect with other fans of the show. And if you'd like to support the show, we sure would appreciate it. Consider becoming a patron at unloadpodcast.com/extra. I've got some full-length interviews and special content available there exclusively for patrons as well. And if you know somebody or you yourself would make an interesting guest for a future episode of Unload and Show Clear, please contact me at lloyd@unloadpodcast.com or click on the contact page on the website and send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Tune in again next time for another episode of Unload and Show Clear.